You've probably heard the stories. You've read the scrolls. The graceful mermaid who sings to sailors and falls in love with the first human who doesn't try to harpoon them. Well, let me set the record straight. Those stories were written by people who have clearly never met a mermaid of my standing. My name is Caelum, and I am, without exaggeration, the most exquisite creature to ever grace the sapphire depths of the southern sea. I don't just swim, I glide. My tail is a masterpiece of iridescent sapphire and silver, and my skin has a luster that makes your finest silks look like dishcloths. So you can imagine my absolute horror when a freak underwater tectonic shift sent me spinning into a jagged reef, knocking me senseless and tossing my beautiful, unconscious body onto a pile of smelly kelp on a human beach. When I woke up, I wasn't in my coral palace. I was in a shack. A small, wooden, drafty shack that smelled like salt and old boots. I was lying on a bed made of, I shudder to even say it, coarse wool. Oh, good, the fish is awake. I bolted upright, or tried to, before a sharp pain in my side reminded me of the reef. I looked toward the door and saw him. He was a human, a massive, towering, sun-bronzed human. He was wearing a vest that did absolutely nothing to hide arms that were thicker than my waist, and his hair was a messy nest of dark curls. He was handsome, I suppose, if you like the rugged, dirt-covered peasant look, which I didn't, obviously. "How dare you?" I snapped, my voice sounding like a melody even when I was furious. "Do you have any idea who I am? And why is this bed so scratchy? I feel like I'm being exfoliated by a giant's tongue."
The man blinked at me, his jaw dropping slightly. "I saved your life," he said, his voice a deep, slow rumble. "I dragged you out of the tide, bandaged your side, and gave you my bed. A thank you would be the normal response." I scoffed, tossing my long, platinum hair over my shoulder. "A thank you? For what? Bringing me to this hovel? Where are my silk wraps? Where is my nectar? And why are you staring at me like that? I know I'm breathtaking, but close your mouth, peasant. You'll catch flies."
The man, whose name I later learned was Eric, let out a long, frustrated sigh. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Listen, you sparkly brat, I'm a fisherman. I work 14 hours a day just to keep a roof over my head. I don't have nectar and I don't have silk. What I do have is a lot of work to do. So if you're going to be a nightmare, you can crawl back into the sea right now. Side wound be damned." I froze. He was actually serious. He was going to kick me out? I looked at the door. The sun was scorching, and I couldn't even stand yet, let alone transform my tail into legs without a month of healing. "Wait," I cried as he turned to leave. You can't just throw me out. I'm injured." "Then act like a guest," Eric grumbled. But as the days went by, I didn't act like a guest. I complained about the porridge, I complained about the smell of fish, I told him his floorboards were uneven and that his decorative taste was tragically rustic. By the 5th day, Eric had reached his limit. He walked into the shack, threw a bag of my belongings, mostly just some seashells I'd gathered, onto the floor and pointed at the door. "Out," he said, his face a mask of calm, terrifying fury. "I don't care if you have to crawl on your belly. I can't do this anymore." I panicked. "Eric, wait! I have something valuable." He paused, one hand on the doorframe. "Unless it's a way to pay for all the food you've eaten and the peace of mind you've destroyed, I don't want to hear it." I gulped, my haughty pride finally taking a back seat to my survival instincts. I can give you pearls. High-quality, imperial-grade pearls, more than you could earn in 10 lifetimes of fishing." Eric turned around, his eyes narrowing. "Pearls? From where? You didn't have anything on you but that shiny tail." I blushed, the heat creeping up my neck. This was the embarrassing part. "Mermaids, our tears, they don't just evaporate. When we feel an extreme emotion, our tears crystallize into pearls. The more intense the emotion, the higher the quality of the pearl. Eric stared at me for a long beat. So you just need to cry. Why haven't you been crying this whole time? I've been pretty mean to you. I rolled my eyes. It doesn't work like that. Sadness tears are dull and gray. They're barely worth a copper. Fear tears are small and brittle. The most valuable pearls, the ones that are perfectly spherical and glow like the moon, come from other things. Eric crossed his massive arms, his biceps bulging in a way that was quite frankly very distracting. What other things? I looked at the floor, my voice dropping to a whisper. Extreme arousal, or extreme love. Those produce the heart pearls. They are the rarest gems in the world. The silence in the room was so thick you could have sliced it with a fillet knife. I dared to look up. Eric was standing there, his whole face turning a deep, dark shade of red. Even his ears were glowing. He was usually so stoic, but now he looked like a shy schoolboy. So, Eric cleared his throat, his voice cracking slightly. You're saying to pay for your stay, we have to... It is a purely business transaction, I snapped, my own face feeling like it was on fire. I am a high-ranking creature of the deep. I am merely utilizing my biological assets to secure my housing. And don't look so smug. It's for your benefit, too. You'll be rich. I'm not smug, Eric muttered, looking everywhere but at me. I'm surprised. You're so arrogant, I didn't think you'd... Well, what? I challenged, sticking my chin up. You should be honored. Many have dived to the depths of the abyss just for a glimpse of me. You get the full experience. And don't worry, I'll try to keep my moans down so your neighbors don't think you're murdering a sea nymph.
Eric looked at me, a sudden playful glint in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Oh, you think you'll be moaning that loud? I am very expressive.
That night, the atmosphere in the shack was different. The air was cool, and the sound of the waves hitting the shore was a steady, rhythmic pulse. Eric had cleared the table and moved his bed closer to the hearth. He was nervous. I could see it in the way his large hands trembled as he lit the candles. He was so big, and I was used to live mermaid suitors who were as graceful as eels. Eric was like a mountain. Are you sure about this, Caelum? I don't want to... I'm just a fisherman. Oh, hush, I said, though my heart was doing a frantic little dance in my chest. Just try to be careful. I'm still recovering. He sat on the edge of the bed, the wood creaking under his weight. He reached out, his calloused hand gently stroking my cheek. His touch was so warm, so grounded. It was a sensation I wasn't used to, the heat of a human. You're beautiful, he whispered, his shyness melting into a raw, honest admiration. I know, I replied, though for once I didn't mean it arrogantly. When he finally pulled me to him, the sheer scale of him became apparent. He was massive. I looked down at his attributes, and my eyes nearly popped out of my head. Oh, by the great Kraken, I thought, my breath hitching. Is that actually going to fit? He's a fisherman, not a whale hunter. What has he been eating? I let out a small, involuntary whimper as he leaned over me, his shadow swallowing me whole. Eric, wait, is that normal for humans? Eric paused, looking down, then back at me with a sheepish grin. I've been told I'm built for hard work. That isn't work. That's a structural hazard, I squeaked. I actually considered sliding off the bed and flopping back to the ocean, but he caught my waist, his fingers sinking into my soft skin. Don't run away now, princess, he murmured, his voice dropping into a deep, gravelly tone that sent a bolt of lightning straight to my core. He began to kiss me, and all my arrogant thoughts vanished. His mouth was hungry but patient. He tasted like salt and honey. As he moved against me, his skin against mine, a heat began to build that I had never felt in the cold depths of the ocean. When he finally entered me, I didn't just moan, I gasped. It was a fullness that was overwhelming, a sensation that made my scales shimmer and my toes curl. "Eric," I cried out, my hands clutching his broad shoulders. "Shh," he whispered, his own breath coming in ragged gasps. "You'll wake the next town over, remember?" I tried to muffle my face in his neck, trying to stay quiet, trying to maintain some shred of my royal dignity, but it was impossible. He moved with a steady, powerful rhythm, his muscles rippling under my touch. Every thrust sent a wave of pleasure through me that felt like a tide coming in, unstoppable and all-consuming. I felt the tears starting to build, not from pain. No, this was something else. It was a sensory overload. Clink, clink, clink. I heard the sound of something hard hitting the wooden floorboards. "Caelum," groaned Eric, his face buried in my hair. "You're doing it." I couldn't help it. I let out a long, high-pitched wail of pure, unadulterated pleasure, my back arching as I hit my peak. The sound echoed off the walls, and I didn't care. I didn't care about the neighbors, I didn't care about the sea, I didn't care about anything but the man holding me. Clink, 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 clink. It sounded like a rain of coins.
When it was finally over, we were both panting, covered in a fine sheen of sweat. Eric pulled me against his chest, his heart thumping like a drum against my ear. He looked over the edge of the bed. "Wow," he breathed. There, scattered across the floor, were 20 of the most beautiful pearls I had ever seen. They were large, perfectly round, and had a soft, pinkish glow. 20, I whispered, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. "I told you I was expressive." Eric laughed, a warm, genuine sound. He kissed my forehead and pulled the wool blanket over us. "You're a miracle, Caelum. A very loud, very expensive miracle."
The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something delicious. I rubbed my eyes, feeling a bit sore but surprisingly refreshed. I looked down and saw that Eric had already cleaned the floor. The pearls were gone. He walked into the shack a moment later, holding a tray with fresh bread, eggs, and fruit. "You're awake," he said, smiling. "I've already been to the market." "You went without me?" I pouted. I wanted to see the look on their faces. "I thought you'd want to sleep," he said, setting the tray on my lap. "I sold 10 of the pearls and all the fish I caught this morning." "And?" I prompted, nibbling on a piece of fruit. "What did you tell them? How does a lowly fisherman suddenly come into possession of the tears of the moon?" Eric sat on the chair, looking quite proud of himself. "I told them I found a hidden grotto during the low tide. I told them the storm must have unearthed an ancient oyster bed from the deep reefs. They were so excited they bought everything I had. They even paid double for the fish, thinking they might find a pearl inside one of them." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy purse, dumping a pile of gold coins onto the bed. "This is for you, your share." I looked at the gold, then back at him. He looked like a puppy waiting for a good boy pat on the head. It was actually kind of adorable. "Well," I said, trying to keep my voice haughty, "I suppose you did an adequate job for a human. I shall allow you to continue this partnership." Eric grinned. "Adequate, huh? I'll try to be superior next time." As my side healed, we developed a system. I found that I could transform my tail into legs if I stayed out of the water long enough, though my gait was a bit wobbly at first. I started accompanying Eric to the market, acting as his assistant or his partner. I wore the finest dresses we could buy with the pearl money, looking every bit the aristocrat, while Eric stayed his rugged, handsome self. We decided on a scarcity strategy. We only brought pearls to the market once a week, and we mixed in a few lower quality pearls Eric found in common clams to make the high quality ones seem even more miraculous. People began to talk about the Fisherman of the grotto and his beautiful, mysterious companion. They thought we were the luckiest people alive. They had no idea.
The pearl business, as I like to call it, was booming. Within a few months, Eric went from being a man who worried about the price of salt to the wealthiest man in the province. And frankly, it was entirely thanks to my admittedly high libido and my exquisite tear ducts. But as the gold piled up, I realized I couldn't possibly be expected to live in a structure held together by hope and seaweed. "Eric," I said one morning, gesturing vaguely at the damped corner of the shack, "this wood is too grainy. It's offensive to my skin. And the way the wind whistles through the cracks sounds like a dying whale. If I am to continue producing the tears of the moon for you, I require a dwelling that reflects my brilliance." Eric, who was busy polishing a particularly large pink pearl, looked up and chuckled. "So you want a palace?" "I want marble that reflects my glow. I want silk hangings from the Eastern empires, and I want a bathhouse large enough to fit you and your hard-working attributes comfortably." And because Eric was a man who knew a good investment when he saw one, and because he was completely wrapped around my finger, he did exactly that. He hired the finest builders in the land to tear down the shack and erect a magnificent estate right on the cliffside. It was white stone and blue tile, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the ocean. It was, in a word, adequate. One evening, we were sitting on the dock, watching the sunset. I had my legs dangled over the edge, the water lapping at my ankles. "You know," Eric said, his hand finding mine, "we have enough gold now. You could go back. You could hire a ship to take you to the deep waters where your people are." I looked at him. He looked sad, but he was being his usual selfless self. He was offering me my freedom. I looked at the estate, then at the gold on my fingers, and then at the massive, kind-hearted man beside me. "And leave my best business partner?" I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "Who would sell my pearls? Who would make my morning eggs? No, Eric, I think I'll stay. The land is a bit dry and the people are a bit dull, but the company is adequate." Eric laughed, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like heavenly. "Just adequate?" he whispered. "Maybe a little more than that," I whispered. And as we walked back to the estate, I felt a familiar prickle in my eyes. But this time it wasn't arousal and it wasn't sadness. It was something new, something pure. I felt a single, perfect pearl roll down my cheek and land in Eric's palm. It glowed with a light I'd never seen before. "That one," I said, smiling at him, "that one is not for sale. That one is yours." Eric looked at the pearl, then at me, and I knew without a single arrogant thought that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The sea was vast, but my world was right here, in a magnificent estate with a fisherman who knew exactly how to make a mermaid cry. Life in our new mansion was a dream of silk sheets and gourmet meals. Eric had half retired from commercial fishing, only taking the boat out when he felt like it to at least maintain the cover of fishing for pearls, which left him much more time to focus on his other duties. Our relationship was a constant cycle of teasing, spicy tension, and a domestic softness that I would never admit to anyone else made me feel like I was floating. One afternoon, I found myself pacing the length of our marble-floored balcony. My legs were restless. Yeah, I know what I said," I muttered to myself, ignoring Eric, who was sitting nearby, watching me with an amused glint in his eyes. "I said the sea was vast, but my world was right here with Eric. It was very poetic, very romantic. I should have written it down. But honestly, I'm a prince. I can't just vanish without telling my family I'm all right. My mother and I are best friends. She probably thinks a shark ate me because I was too busy looking at my own reflection." "Caelum," Eric interrupted my internal monologue, leaning back in his chair. "You've walked 3 miles in that one circle. Just tell me what's wrong." I stopped and huffed, crossing my arms. I want to go back, not to stay, just to visit. I have to let my father and my sister know I didn't die in a reef. And my mother, she'll be inconsolable. She's probably already held 3 funerals and claimed my pearl collection for herself. Eric stood up, walking over to me. He loomed over me in that way he did, that massive, grounding presence that always made my heart do a stupid little flip. Then we'll go. I blinked. We? We have the new boat, Eric said, brushing a stray hair from my face. It's fast. We can sail out far enough so no one sees us, and I'll drop you off. I'll wait for you on the ship until you're ready to come back. I looked up at him, my arrogant mask slipping for a second. My eyes went watery and wide. The cute look that I knew perfectly well made him lose his mind. Really? You'd wait for me? Of course, he murmured, his voice dropping into that deep, possessive register. I didn't waste a second. I stepped forward, sat right on his lap, and wrapped my arms around his thick neck. You really are the most superior human, Eric. He didn't answer with words. He kissed me, a deep, hungry kiss that tasted like a promise. And as usually happened when we got too close, that one kiss led to another very long, very intimate business transaction right there on the marble floor. It was a wonder I didn't produce an entire necklace of pearls by the time we were finished. When the air had finally cooled and I was tucked against his chest, I looked at him. You know, you could actually go to the kingdom with me. Eric laughed softly. Caelum, I'm a fisherman. I'm good at many things, but breathing underwater isn't one of them. Oh, don't be so dramatic, I teased, poking his chest. There's a secret fruit that grows all over the reefs near our kingdom. We call it the glassberry. My people eat it for nourishment, but if a land dweller eats it, their lungs transform. They can breathe underwater for 30 days. You just have to eat one every month. 30 days? You're serious? I'm a mermaid, Eric. I don't joke about fruit. Will you come with me? I want to introduce my family to the man who keeps me so busy. Eric smiled, kissing the top of my head. If I can breathe, I'll go anywhere you are. We set off the next morning. Eric told his colleagues and our neighbors that we were heading out to explore further waters and find new fishing grounds so as not to raise any suspicions. Once the coastline had vanished and the water turned a deep, royal indigo, I dived in. The moment the salt water hit my skin, the magic took hold. My legs fused together, the blue and silver scales erupting along my skin as my tail returned in all its iridescent glory. I dived deep, found the hidden grotto, and returned with 2 glowing, translucent berries. Eric had found a hidden, mist-covered cove to hide the ship so it wouldn't be stolen. I climbed back onto the deck, dripping and ethereal. Eric stared at me, his breath catching. It had been months since he'd seen my tail in the light. You're breathtaking, Caelum. I know, I said with a gay wink. Now, eat the fruit. He ate the berry, making a face because it apparently tasted like sour kelp, and then he dived. I was there to catch him. The moment he opened his eyes underwater and realized he could breathe, his face was a mask of pure wonder. I took his hand. With a powerful flick of my tail, we shot forward. I was fast, much faster than any boat. Eric held on to me, his eyes wide as we sped through forests of glowing coral and past schools of silver fish that bowed as I passed. The kingdom was a masterpiece of magic and architecture, hidden behind a shimmering veil of ancient spells. As we broke through the veil, the city of Aethelgard appeared, towers of white shell and gardens of bioluminescent anemones. Caelum! A voice like a silver bell echoed through the water. It was my mother. She was beautiful, with hair like spun silk and a tail that matched mine. She swam towards us like a darting arrow. The reunion was a whirlwind of tears, and yes, pearls were falling everywhere. My father, the king, was stern at first, but once he saw the way Eric looked at me, and once he felt the sheer physical power of the man, he seemed satisfied. My older sister spent most of the time trying to figure out how a human could be so, well built. He's a fisherman, Mother, I explained, gesturing to Eric, who was currently being poked by a group of curious mermaid children. He saved my life, and he has a mansion, and he's very good at, logistics. My mother smiled, whispering to me, He's a snack, Caelum. You always did have excellent taste.
We stayed for 3 months. I showed Eric the secret grottos, the underwater libraries, and the festivals where we danced in the currents. The whole kingdom rejoiced at the return of their prince, and Eric was treated like a hero. Eventually, though, the pull of the land returned. We sailed back to our white stone mansion, but things were different now. We had 2 worlds. Every few months, we would tell the neighbors we were going on a trip, eat our glassberries, and disappear into the blue. I stood on our balcony on our first night back, the gold ring glinting on my finger. Eric walked up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy?" he asked. I leaned back into him, looking out at the waves. Honestly, I thought, being a mermaid prince with a mansion and a muscular human husband is quite a lot of work, but I suppose someone has to do it. "I suppose," I said out loud, turning in his arms to give him a sassy, lingering smile. And they lived happily ever after, just like I always knew we would. I mean, look at me. How could we not? Eric laughed, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like the sea and home. And for once, I didn't have a single arrogant thing to say.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more BL stories.